Yep.
What's up, guys? This is Curtis Riggleman here. This is our first official Curtis Riggleman podcast. Today, I'm going to be going over a little bit of my story from being number one car thief to number one car salesman. I have some of my friends here with me. I got my brother Mark with me to my right. One of my good friends, Josh, here to my left. That's going to help me co-host this. And we're just going to tell a story.
Very cool. And so let's introduce Mark. We got Mark over here. This is his first podcast he's ever been on. He's super excited, actually, to be on camera. He loves the way his voice sounds. Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and how you know Curtis?
Well, my name is Mark Butts, and Curtis is my brother.
Who has more tattoos?
Mark does.
Mark does.
Maybe. He's getting closer.
We might have to take off our shirts and see that later. Okay, so this episode is going to be really cool because this is not only our first one, but we're going to be going over a ton of stuff and sharing with you guys actually Curtis's story. And since Mark and Curtis are both really close, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that we go over today. So that'll be really cool. And we're going to go over so many things that I actually think that this is going to go a little over 30 minutes, but I think 20 to 30 minutes, you guys can expect some really cool stories and get to know Curtis a little more. But this is definitely going to cover a lot of mindset and a lot of entrepreneur sort of related content. So I think that's what people can expect out of this for the 20, 30 minutes that we talk. And there's going to be 2 episodes. So these 2 episodes are going to be really going over Curtis's background and his life. So Curtis, why don't we start with that? If you're cool with using that as the intro.
Yeah. So, there's one thing I definitely want to get through on this message is, I think a lot of people that wouldn't know me might look at where I'm at now and they think maybe my background is different or this type of lifestyle wouldn't apply to them for whatever reason. So one thing I definitely want people to know is we're all the same. If you're struggling and you're in a place of poverty, and I don't care what you got going on in your life, I've been there. We're all the same. There's a positive outcome for anybody who wants it. You know what I mean? So that's one message that I definitely try to, instill in people.
That's cool. I dig that. Because I think a lot of people, even myself included, we always end up seeing people that are successful and we just think there's a distance between us.
Exactly. You think that, that applies to them, but that wouldn't work for me or whatever the case is. You think we're all the same.
Yeah.
In my business, I've had the luxury of meeting so many millionaires, when I'm selling cars, and you have an opportunity to talk to them, same as you when you're tattooing. You got an opportunity to talk to these people for 30, 40 an hour, and you start realizing we're no different. Mm-hmm. In most cases, they just did a little bit more. They took action. They followed a plan. Sometimes they got lucky, but we're all the same. We're all the same.
Very cool. I dig that. So Curtis, why don't we go over a couple of things in regards to, I want to get straight to it. I want to get to how did you go from stealing cars to making money and becoming successful and giving back to to your community and building this thing that you have now, this YouTube channel, but also your business itself.
So stealing cars was not something I did for fun originally. It was survival. So when I was 12 or 13, my dad had taught me how to steal cars. My dad was a thief all growing up. My mom and dad both were on drugs when I was a child. And I learned how to steal cars with my dad. When I was 13, my dad caught a charge that cost him 10 years. And me, my brother, my mom, we lived in a hotel or motel on Motel Drive in Fresno, which is, if anyone knows that area, it's the shit, right? And so stealing cars was something I did for survival. That's the one thing I knew how to do right away. And I didn't even start stealing cars. It was breaking into cars and stealing valuables that I could sell to pay bills. And then it graduated into stealing cars. I probably didn't steal my first car until I was like 14 and on my own. And then after 50 or so, it started becoming an addiction. And I would make money on every maybe 5th car, 6th car, but I was stealing 4 to 7 every day. I probably averaged 5 a day for a little over 3 years. And it was an addiction. I mean, it became an addiction to where that's all I thought about was just stealing cars. It was like a drug. It was like a drug. It had gotten so bad to where I would push the envelope to almost try to get caught to see how close I can get to getting caught without getting caught. I mean, there'd be times I would watch somebody get out of their car and walk to the grocery store, and I would steal their car before they got in, and I would drive right behind them just to see if I got their attention or not. and just
So it was a little bit of a thrill.
it was a thrill, probably the first 100 cars, and then that thrill completely goes away, and it's just an addiction. And then you feel like you have to push the envelope. I imagine this is something like drugs. I never got hooked on drugs, so I don't know how to relate that, but I imagine people overdose because they want more and more and more. And it became similar to that stealing cars, was you had to push the envelope to see how far you could push it and go until you get caught, which I eventually did get caught 3 times as a juvenile. And back then they would just release you.
So if I could ask you like a question about not just boosting cars necessarily, but about Curtis, 14 years old, stealing cars, was that like, did you think that was just your life like this? You were desperate. Was it some sort of like, was this the cure to your problem? Like what was driving you to do it? And
originally, it was the only thing that drove me there was that was how I paid the rent. Because shortly after my dad had went to prison, it wasn't too long after that my mom had hooked up with a drug dealer, and then she went to Arizona for a few months. So it's just me and my brother. He's 3 years younger than I am. So at this time I'm 14. I think he's 11 or something. And we're at this hotel called the Sands, the one you tattooed on my back. Mm-hmm. And so I would steal cars because they charged $125 a week to rent there. And stealing cars, I could figure out a way to hustle up $125 a week if it was the radios or whatever. And it just became an addiction. It's like I did it every day. The moment I woke up, that's all I thought about.
And when you were focusing on that, did you ever have dreams like in the future where this would go, or did you expect it to end terribly?
No, I knew that was going to be means to an end. And around 14 or 15, I started verbalizing to everybody I knew that I was going to be rich someday. This was not going to be my life. I was going to be out of this, but I didn't know how. And I just knew I was. And so it's very strange. I still continued to steal cars until I ended up getting caught at 17. I ended up having to do 6 months in juvenile hall in a program. At that time, they called it CK Wakefield. It was a 6-month program that they would let you do. And that was like your last chance before you went to YA. And then during that program is when I stopped. When I got out, I think I might have been 18 right when I got out, or like shortly after that, and then stopped stealing cars.
Okay, so from there, obviously things changed. You probably learned some lessons, and obviously you are here today, where you're actually your profession is like the exact opposite of stealing cars. So why don't you take us all the way to there, and then we'll fill in some of the gaps in between.
Okay, so while I was stealing cars on Motel Drive, in another motel down the road, there was a guy there named Nathan that was, he was probably like 45 at that time, and I was just a teenager, right? So he was almost a dad figure in a way, and he came and picked me up and said, hey, we're going to go do a side job. Do you want to earn some extra money, right? And so he took me and he introduced me to an older man named Bob Papazian, old Armenian guy, wealthy guy. I learned a lot from this guy, and my first job with him was right when I turned 15. They hired me on as a laborer to carry a roofing tar onto a roof, the building next door to the one you tattoo out of. And I started doing that with him. And so I would work with him a couple days a week part-time, and then I would steal cars every other day. Or I'd come home and steal cars at night because I was still addicted to it. And I'd steal cars after I was done working with him. I ended up working with Bob all the way until I was 20 years old, and Bob ended up taking me under his wing like a kid almost. Like he looked at me like his child. He taught me a lot, so I'm very grateful for that. But eventually, I had stopped working with him because I'd maxed out. When I was 20, he had me at $10 an hour, and when I asked for a raise above $10 an hour, he had told me, he goes, Curtis, you're at the end of the rope. This is the most I can afford to pay. So I started looking for another job, and an acquaintance I knew was a truck driver, right? And he was making $1,000 a week. And I thought that was rich. If I can just get on that program, I'm set for life, right? I'd never seen $1,000 to that point. So I thought if you had $1,000 a week, that was rich, right? So I went to a truck driving school. It was $3,000 to apply. A friend of mine loaned me the $3,000 to go to this truck driving school. It was an 8-week truck driving school. Now, the one cool thing when you steal that many cars is you learn how to drive. Because I got to drive cars like I was a movie star because I didn't care if they broke or whatever it was. So this 8-week truck driving school, I ended up passing this school in 11 days. I had my truck driver license, right? So I quit with Bob, and I went to go get a truck driving job making $1,000 a week. Well, nobody will hire you. So the only place that would even consider hiring me was for $9 an hour, because if you don't got 2 years experience, the insurance won't cover you. So it's on the owner to let you drive the truck. So no one would cover me. So it was $9 an hour was the best thing I got offered. And I owed my friend $3,000. I'm like, that's $1 less than I was making, and I'm in $3,000 in debt, which $3,000 in debt at that time was like a house payment, right? I mean, that was huge. And so I was like, shit, what am I gonna do? And then I saw an ad that said, drivers wanted home every night, earn up to $500 a day. So I went there, check it out. What is this? And it was selling meat out of the back of a truck. Have you seen those?
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah. So that's what it was. It was selling meat out of the back of a truck.
So your first sales job.
That was my first sales job. It was a complete accident. I wasn't intending on doing sales. I thought I was gonna be a truck driver. So
It just sounds funny.
I gotta make some money. I'm fucking broke. You know, I'm broke. I'm still in this fucking hotel, and I gotta make some money. So I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I'll go sell some meat out of this truck, right? And somebody partnered up with me. I got with somebody that was more experienced and watched them do it a few times, and it just came natural. It came really, really natural. All of a sudden, I'm making $300 a day, but you get paid daily. You get paid out at the end of the day. So, and you're collecting the money up front, so you could actually spend the money throughout the day if you wanted to, which is what ended up happening. You know, I have nothing at home, so I make $100 on a sale. I'm going to buy a pair of Nikes, and at the end of the day, I would have stuff and I have no money. So I did that for 2 months, and I was tired of driving everywhere. You're driving all over the place, man. I mean, the drive time was exhausting, right? So I'm thinking, now that I realize I'm good at sales, it came very natural to me. I'm like, I wish there was something that where people came to me and I could sell them something. I'm tired of driving, you know? And then, so one day I'm driving down Blackstone on my way home, and I saw the car lot, and I just swung into one. And I went in there and said, hey, I want to apply for a sales position. And the guy says, he goes, well, where's your suit? We don't interview anybody without a suit. And I don't own a suit. I'm dressed in like a Pendleton and like some khaki type pants because I'm trying to look like a delivery driver, because that was my pitch selling this meat. Mm-hmm. You know, when I go knock on your door and say, hey, Mrs. Smith down the road's not home. I got left a package right here. I'll sell it to you at cost if you want to help me get off this. That was like my pitch, right? And so I'm dressed like a delivery driver, and he's like, we don't interview anybody without a suit. But I don't have a suit. I said, I don't own a suit. He goes, well, if you get a suit, come back in the interview. I'm like, fuck, man. So I leave there, and I pull into another car lot, right? Which happened to be Lithia, which is a big chain now across the country. At that time, it wasn't nowhere near as big as it is now. And so I pull in there, and I get interviewed by somebody. And sure as shit, if it ain't about the second question out of his mouth, he's like, you really came to an interview like this? You don't own a suit? And now I'm a little bit annoyed because the first guy kind of embarrassed me. I'm like, I don't own a fucking suit. You know, I'm like, if I could sell meat in this Pendleton, what's the difference of selling cars in a suit? I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so he left, and he brought somebody else in, and that guy interviewed me. I ended up being there for like 2 hours and interviewed with like 5 different people. And then the first guy came back in, who I learned later was the general sales manager. And he was like, hey, we want to bring you on, you know, can you start tomorrow? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. And so right away I'm thinking, I don't have clothes. You know what I mean? The nicest thing I own is what I have on right now. I'm like, I don't have clothes for this. You know what I mean? He's like, can you start tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't have these nice clothes and stuff. He's like, we'll give you a little bit of time or whatever. And it was, I came in the next day and we started training.
Wow.
Now you try and get hired on. It's a 2-week process. It's not like it was back then. Back then I started the very next day.
So let's do something fun and jump straight towards where you're at now, and then we'll fill in some of the gaps too. But it's kind of interesting to think that you were stealing cars, didn't own a suit, you were trying to sell meat, thinking that that's like your thing, right?
No, I thought truck driving was my thing.
Okay.
Which is funny now because I fucking hate driving.
Yeah, that is funny.
I got some badass cars, but I don't like to drive long distance at all. Anytime I go out of town or anything else, my wife does the driving.
Wow. Okay. So let's jump to where you're at now. What are you doing now? And then we'll kind of go backwards again, filling in those gaps because there'll be a lot of interesting stuff for people to hear about.
So right now I'm a sales director. I'm a operations director for a group called the Farney Group. And right now we have 6 dealerships. We're a grown company. The owner, who's same age as I am, and he's just as driven as I am, if not more. And so it's a perfect match. He lets me push and drive because he's got the same drive. So it was a perfect match together. So I'm the operations director, meaning I'm directly underneath him, and I oversee his stores. We have 6 stores right now. We're in the process of buying 3 more, and then we're also building another. So our goal is to continue buying, and the next few years we'd like to get 20, 30 of them.
Very cool.
So that's what I do. I oversee everybody right now, and a big portion of that is a lot of training. I do a lot of training. I train from the sales to the assistant sales managers, the finance, the GSMs, the general managers. I train all these positions. So when we go in, like we're about to close on another 3 stores in one shot, I'll be there for probably a year, recruiting, training, building the processes, getting the stores profitable, getting these stores to stand on their own so I can move on to the next one and then just come back and maintenance these stores.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
So you're working with a lot of people, a lot of new people probably to this, but also seasoned people. When it comes to that kind of training, is there something that really stands out to you in regards to like the thing you're trying to overcome with training, or is it kind of general, or is there like a specific sort of message you're usually sharing in this type of stuff?
It depends on what it is. I mean, every position kind of has a different type of training, but it's all different, but it's all the same because it's all people relationships. I mean, it's all managing and handling different types of people in different scenarios, but so it's each position is different, but again, it's all the same.
Right.
So it depends on who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about and what type of training I'm doing.
Yeah. I want to ask Mark a question about that because me and Mark have talked pretty extensively while tattooing him, and I think it'd be really interesting to kind of hear what Mark has to say about like who you are as a person in regards to your training and your mentorship and stuff. But I mean, we've talked pretty extensively about many things, but Mark always seems to light up when he talks about how much you are the kind of person who really selflessly, we're not going to hear it from you, so that's why I bring this up. We're going to hear it from Mark and from me, that you very selflessly give back to others and want to see other people succeed and really do it without a lot of recognition. And that's a really rare thing. You don't know a lot of people that do that. So Mark, can you kind of lead me into that a little bit with that? We've talked about it while tattooing your throat, which is really hard to do. But tell me about that. Like what kind of guy Curtis is in that regard, and also, like I would say, what makes him so special when it comes to training others and giving back?
It's awkward.
It is, because I know you're not going to want to. I can't ask you this question, but I can ask Mark this question.
Well, for me, he's the kind of guy that you'd want your son to be. He's the kind of guy that, always tries to do the right thing, builds up everybody around him. When he took off, he never left anybody behind. Mm. And like you said, he does never want no recognition for it. He's just a good person. The epitome of a good person. He tries to do the best thing for everybody every single time. And he puts a lot of weight on his shoulders to help out a lot of people, but that's what keeps him going.
Right.
So going back to the beginning where he was saying when he went to juvenile hall, that's where the change began, because he left out, he got his girlfriend pregnant. So when he got out of juvenile hall, his son was born immediately after he got out of juvenile hall. And he was still just a kid, 17 years old. And he never looked back.
Wow. Never
once. Sometimes he would like tease the idea of he would get a car and he'd be like, oh man, if I just had one more car to steal, I could put a motor in this thing and it would be badass. But he never looked back.
Yeah.
He always moved forward, and he struggled for a long time at these little jobs, and we worked together, and he struggled. I remember riding around on bicycles, going to car lots, and him spending $300 on a car, and him telling me one day that this is going to be something better than what it is right now, but this is what we have.
Yeah.
And to watch him grow and see him do it legitimately.
That's cool.
With
Yeah,
no-
legitimate.
Well,
Legally.
no. There's not one foot in the gutter and one foot, in a pair of slacks.
Just go.
He's fully on board with being just an amazing person. That's it.
So, Curtis, I got to ask you then, where does that come from? That drive, that desire, that push, that hearing Mark say that, like,
Can you hear me okay from here?
yeah,
Just a shitty childhood, man. I mean, just a shitty childhood, dude. I mean, when I talk about my car thieving days, that was really the second chapter of my life. That was the better chapter. I mean, prior to that was the shit. You know what I mean? So, I mean, growing up with, and I got to be careful what I say right now because I have a relationship with my mom now. We didn't have a relationship till I was really like 20. And that's when she got clean and we started building a relationship again. And now I take care of my mom. She lives in one of my houses and we're very close. So I got to be careful what I say right now because if she watches this podcast, I don't want to hurt her feelings. But, growing up, in that type of environment, we were constantly homeless. And when I say homeless, people say like, oh, I was homeless, but they had a home. And no, we were fucking homeless. My dad would get U-Hauls and we would live in a U-Haul for a month or two until the cops came and found it. We'd steal a car. We'd live in that car for a month until the cops rolled in and picked it up, and all our shit would drive away in that car. We'd break into empty apartments. We lived outside the Poverello house in a tent for a month. We lived outside the Poverello house in a stolen car for 2 months before they towed it away. We were really, really homeless, you know what I mean? And it was because of this drug addiction that my parents had. So, it was a turning cycle. So every time payday rolled around, which was the welfare, we would get to live with somebody for about 2 weeks because my dad would have drugs. So somebody would let us stay with them because of the drugs. But as a kid, when you live in that type of house, the lights are on, the TVs are on, the radio's fucking blaring, people are walking all around you, and you're in the corner of the fucking living room trying to sleep. They give you a blanket, and you're laying there, and you're trying to sleep, and you can't ask nobody to turn the radio down or nothing, because they're just they're doing their thing, you know what I mean? So that would last for about 2 weeks, and then the dope would run out, and then usually as these different people were coming down, there would always end up being a fight somewhere, and then you had to leave. And then we'd go back to living in a stolen car for another couple of weeks till the payday roll around again, or sitting out in a tent in Poverello house, which is a really disgusting area. So up until we got into that motel, we had barely gotten that motel when my dad caught that charge that cost him like 10 years. Otherwise, that wouldn't have lasted either. So once he caught that charge, and I had to figure out how to hustle $125 a week to stay in that motel, I lived in that motel for 4 years after that. I think it was maybe longer than that. I think I might have been 18 or 19 before I finally got out of there.
And so real quick too, because we're going to cover like how that turned you into this guy you are today. I mean, I know you well, but the people watching might not. So we'll go over that in a second. But real quick, let's describe, just for this context, describe really Motel Drive, because people might.
So I guess to sum up your first question right there, that drive just comes from living that fucking life. And it's like, I was determined, like, this stops with me. Because the Riggleman name prior to me, if somebody said Riggleman, that was like a gross ass name. That was known as all bad shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, this stops with me. From moving forward, Riggleman's gonna be a name that people respect. So that childhood made that happen. You know what I mean? Motel Drive it's a place where, I don't know how to describe it. It's nothing but hookers, drug addicts, convicts. It's where all the scum of the earth go to live. They build the homeless shelters there.
Yep.
I mean, it's just you wouldn't want to drive through there,
right?
Let alone walk through there, let alone live there. I mean, you could, if you could picture like needles on the floor, hookers, drug addicts. We used to watch people like pissing and shitting right in front of you.
Yeah.
Hookers would just piss right in the middle of the road.
Right where they were walking.
And
Right.
you know that's what Motel Drive is. It's horrible.
What would you say, Mark, about Motel Drive?
You know,
I mean, you could say anything. We could always edit it out if it's a little too graphic.
it was just the lifestyle that we were living at that time.
Did it feel normal? Or did it always feel like this isn't it? Or did it start to feel kind of like home in a way? Like familiar?
No, at the time, and you know, it was all you had.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it too much.
At the time, it felt normal, huh?
Yeah, Curtis did all the thinking. I just rode with him. You know, yeah.
Just that's it. So Curtis, did it feel to you like it was just that was it? Like normal life?
It was a lot better than the fucking tent.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. It was a lot better than you know, sleeping outside the Poverello house. You know, when my dad would come down, you know, when we lived down in front of the Poverello house, it was during the come down time. So we'd have to sit in the car. When my parents sat in the front, we'd sit in the back, and you weren't allowed to talk. You know what I mean? So they would do breakfast in the morning, and so you get to go in there and go to breakfast and use the restroom and all that shit, and they give you a bag lunch, and then dinner wasn't until I think 5 or 6 o'clock. So you literally had to sit in that back seat all day, and you couldn't talk or anything because my dad would freak out because he was trying to sleep for 2 weeks, and that was it. So getting to that motel, honestly, was a fucking treat. The hotel was nice. You know what I mean? In my mind, that was a whole lot nicer than what I had before. You know what I mean? And every now and then, because you rarely moved rooms because you basically lived in it. But every now and then they would make you move so you didn't become a permanent resident, right? And so if you moved to a new room and it was like a little nicer than the other one, that was pretty cool. Right. You know what I mean? It was like, fuck.
Clean.
I could even remember one had a fucking love seat in it. And that was like, oh, that's the shit right there. Another one we got had 2 beds. So we put we put a curtain up between the beds. So we all had each own our room. And that was pretty cool.
That is
cool.
cool.
What I mean? So, yeah, it was a whole lot better than a tent, I'll tell you that.
Right. And I think Mark agrees.
Yeah.
Do you like the love seat?
Well, I watched him turn the kitchenette into his home bedroom.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So let's go straight to where we're at today, and we're just going to jump the gun a little because next episode we're going to cover a lot of what we're doing now, right? What Curtis Riggleman's doing now, and we'll go over where you can find Curtis at the end. If you guys are here watching on YouTube, you know how to find him here. But let's talk a little bit about the YouTube, and we'll kind of talk also about a little bit more what you want to do in the future. So let's go over some of that stuff now.
So how we got to the YouTube channel, right? So once I got into the car business, I got to back up a little bit. Once I got into the car business, okay, my first 2 weeks, one thing that happened is that one of the reasons I'm so passionate about training, when I got there, somebody trained me for 10 days before he allowed me to talk to a customer. And that's irreplaceable. You know, today, nobody trains nobody. You start the job, they toss you out front, and 90% of the people just fail, right? This guy trained me for 10 days, and once he let me on the floor, which was December 16th of 2001, was the first time I got to talk to a customer. I sold a car on day 1, and I ended up selling 11 cars before the month was over. And I didn't know what I made. I didn't know exactly how it worked. But my first check for that 2 weeks was $5,100. Yeah, life-changing income, right? I'm talking life-changing. And there's more stories that go behind that. I can tell you what I did with check and all that shit, right? But from that point forward, I knew right then, I go, this is my way out right here. This is the path I've been looking for. This is where I'm meant to be. So from that day forward, I started studying. I wanted to know everything about car sales. I was paying for shit back then, you know, $600, $800 in 2002 to attend these seminars. Nobody was paying for that shit. Nobody wanted to spend that kind of money. You know, $600 or $800 in 2002 is a lot more than fucking $2,000 today. Yeah. You know, these seminars today, the one we went to, I think was $2,000, right? 2,000 sounds like a lot.
The next one was like
$5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one we're going to October was $5,000, but $800 in 2002 when you're broke was a lot, right? And I continued to go to these things. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get better. And that's what happened is I took it so serious. And you know, I don't know if you can get that drive out of somebody who didn't have that type of background. You know, that's the hardest thing for me to teach. And a lot of the guys that I'm training now is that burning desire to win, that drive to fucking win. I could give them all the tools, but I can't make them want it, you know? But I didn't have the tools at the time, but I wanted it more than anybody else. And it just took off from there, So now, as I grew, by 2003, everybody was coming to me all the time. I was a top guy, top performer. I'm making good money. Everybody's coming to me now. Curtis, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I just started teaching people. And I got a joy out of helping other people succeed. As much as I liked watching them succeed as much as I liked the success myself. So I would coach them through the deal. And I had no part of it. There was no stake in it for me. I didn't get any reward from it other than watching them succeed. But it made me feel good, right? So that's how it kind of developed. And they put me in management, assistant sales manager, closer. And at that time, Lithia was growing it. At that time, I think it had 100 stores. Now it's like up to like 300 stores or something. But at that time, it had 100 stores. And they would send out every month everyone's numbers for you to see, the top 20 of, you know, closers, sales managers, finance. They'd send these out in the company for everybody to see. But from 2002, I became a closer late 2002, almost 2003. I left in 2006. But in that time, I was the top closer in the entire company every single month. I never lost a month. And I just fell in love with training. I would train my guys. It was consistent.
You still do that today.
I still do that today at a higher level.
And you want to start doing that
But
here.
I fell in love with it then.
Right.
And then that same process grew me all the way to the top position because I was constantly training everybody underneath me. And a lot of people fail to do that. They want to do everything themselves. And I get common answers like, well, Curtis, it's just quicker if I do it myself. I'm like, but then you're as good as one. If I train 5 other people to do it, I can do what you're doing times 5. And people just don't understand that. So I was constantly training people, and I grew these badass teams. Everywhere I went has been the elite. It's been the baddest team in the area. And the store we have now, I mean, our stores just crushed the competition. It's not even close. I mean, it's light years apart. And it's took me where I'm at now. So now, I honestly don't remember who it was, but somebody was like, man, you ought to take this online, Curtis. You could help so many people if you just started putting this online for people to watch. So it started there. It had nothing to do with monetary or how could I make money on this or any of that. It was just like, how do I help me 20 years ago? How do I give them some stuff, right? So that's how it started. So all I did was I started training. I think I had my wife do the first one. I would just have her come in and just film on my phone my training sessions when I had the whole team there. So every Sunday, I bring in all the staff. We come in an hour before the store opens, and we do an hour of training. We call it a power hour. We do an hour of training before the store opens at 10. Because Sunday's a day, it's a short shift. I can get everybody there, and it's not too inconvenient. I do training almost every day throughout the week with different people in different areas. But that Sunday, we got everybody there. So it's a good day to film because it's exciting.
Right.
So we started training it, started breaking down the videos, putting it out there, and now it's starting to grow. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on online, and it's just inspiring me to keep this thing going now.
What are some of the messages that are like hitting the hardest when it comes to viewership or just like things that you share?
Are you saying the messages to me or messages to them?
Yeah, the ones that you're sharing that really seem to be impactful, that's kind of a repetitive thing, or the thing that's like the running theme.
You know, the stuff I'm sharing is just the ones that impact the most for some reason. It's just the most basic stuff. The stuff you would think that anybody would teach somebody before they put them out in front of a customer. I mean, even the stuff where I do a proper meet and greet, how to introduce yourself to somebody, how to introduce yourself to the family, how to ask the right question to transition the deal to the next step. Stuff you should be taught on day one in the first hour of employment. And then I got people messaging back saying, man, this stuff is great, Curtis. Thank you for sharing this. This has really helped me and this and that. And it's a mixed emotion because at the same time, I'm happy that I got to help this person. I'm also sad that someone else didn't teach them this before they put them in front of a customer.
Right.
Because that's scary as fuck. You know, you're not taught anything and you're told, hey, go get a customer, go sell a car. And they're like, I don't know what to do. You know, and a little bit makes me angry a little bit. It's like you're setting somebody up to fail.
Right.
And then when you watch them fail, you don't take no responsibility for it. You blame it on that guy. You go, yeah, he just wasn't cut out for the business. No, you fucking suck. You sent the guy out there with no training, and you set him up for failure.
So off camera, we were talking about you building a high performance community. So I think next episode, part 2 of this, that's what we're going to be going over is like the high performance part, the mindset, the sort of stuff that me and you have talked about for the last few years. And we'll go over some of that stuff. Can you give us a little taste of what that's going to be like, not just in the episodes to come, but just for next time we can go over a lot of those things?
Well, the high performance community will basically be a train-to-trainer program. I want to start communities with the top high performers across the whole country. I want to group them into 25 people at a time, so it's not too overwhelming, and there's still enough people that we can gain a lot from each other, but we could also each get a piece in the conversation, right? We could learn something from each other. So I'm going to cap it at 25 people per session, but it's going to be, I know it'll only be high performers because it's going to cost money. Only high performers are willing to cough up money to get better. So it cuts out the guys that don't want to be there or not interested in learning. And that's really the only reason I even want to charge, is because I want an exclusive group of people that want to learn and get better, because I want to train the trainer. If I train and work with 25 people that want to go and spread that to another 25 people, then I'll start affecting thousands of people. So that's the next process I'm going to go to, is start building this high performance training community, but we're a little ways down the road from that.
Right. If you were to give just one little tip or something that you can say to people, maybe they're not car salesmen, maybe they're just in business or sales, maybe they're entrepreneurs, which is sales, right? If you're an entrepreneur and you don't know sales, you're
it's going to be tough.
Screwed.
It's all people business. I mean, I don't even know if it's sales. It's just people relations. You know, being able to talk to people, make people feel good about whatever it is you want them to do. You know, being an influencer. I mean, that's what you're really doing.
Right.
You know,
you're influencing people and leading them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And sometimes, most of the time, people want something. They want what you have. They're just too afraid to cross that
Sure.
line. Right. So they just need your little bit of persuasion to help them feel good about it. And so many times, I've introduced myself to people and they tell me up front, I'm not doing anything today. They're all their fear and their defense flares up. And then when the deal's done, and they say, Curtis, thank you for helping me get this done. We've been doing this for a month. I wanted to get this over with. I'm so tired of going to car lots, and it's complete opposite. So they all want the same thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't come out. They want the same thing. It's your job to be able to be crafty enough and influence and persuade them enough and make them feel good about making the transaction so they can get it behind them.
Right.
Make sense?
That's cool.
It's people business. So it's not sales. It's just people business.
Right. And that's exactly right. Something me and you have talked about a lot, and actually you've helped me with in many ways. One of the reasons why I got Amber in the shop, because it's exactly right. It's all about people, right? Like one of the things I talk about often, and I think it's the thing that me and you actually connected with the most, is there's no dollar, there's no like, there's no comment, there's no DM, there's no transaction without a human on the other side. Mm-hmm. Computers are not paying you. PayPal's not paying you. These are all just means to an end between transactions. It's people between us. So it sounds like that's what you're saying there too, in a different way. But next episode, we're going to talk about a bunch of the stuff, the mindset stuff, and we'll go over the high performance stuff. That'll be fun because I would actually even like to get into some of the training that you've gone over, some of the stuff that you've not only done, but stuff even we're going to and what we get out of it, right? Share that with some of that stuff with the people. Mark, this is your first podcast we've ever done together. It's pretty cool. It's actually, this is the first podcast in general, but Curtis has been on mine before. Right? Yep. Curtis has been with me on my podcast, so this isn't exactly brand new to us. But Mark, it is. How'd you feel?
I liked it.
Yeah?
Yeah,
You're natural. You just have so much to say.
Yeah.
You're just so good at it.
I stay quiet.
And chicks dig tattoos, man. So we got to get you on camera time to time. Mark, I think you did good. I think this was rad. Curtis, anything you want to say before we leave? How people can be part of this, or what to expect?
You can jump on any one of my social media accounts. If you go to YouTube, it's official Curtis Riggleman. Instagram's official Curtis Riggleman, and TikTok is at Curtis Riggleman. And you'll find a lot of training material on there, a lot of motivational things on there, and just check it out. If it helps, I'll be glad to help.
Right on. So thank you guys for watching this. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me host. That was really cool and super fun. And we'll see you guys next time. And that will be part 2 of Curtis's story.
All right.
All right.